record it for me. And then I think we'll kind of kick off, given that we're kind of just coming up 5 minutes past the hour and honoring your time, Jim. And I know you're on again the very early hours of the morning for EMEA, so that's really good of you. So thank you very much for joining us. So welcome, those of you that have joined. Thank you. And again, if you're coming in from somewhere smoky in the US, my hearts go out to you. I'm really thinking about the fires. A lot pops up on the news, tells us what's going on. So I'm really thinking about you. So I'm Charlotte Blair, and welcome to the coaches-led community learning series. I was going to pick up your spiel, Jim, and completely copy that, and I thought, no, that's not right. Do something different. So it feels like a bit of a role reversal here, where I've been on Call to Coach a couple of times with Jim, and it's a bit of the other way around. It's exactly that I was thinking. Yeah, I think I want to start a podcast. And I message Jim sometimes, and I go, hey, Jim, what's the best webcam that I should have? And what's the best speaker that I should have? And I thought, all these questions that I've got, I'm sure other people have got. So I asked Jim whether he would join us and share his insights. So I've got this list of questions that I'm planning on asking Jim from my perspective. And then I'm sure some of you will have your own questions as well. So we'll kind of work through this, get the conversation going. If you've got other questions, pop them in chat as well. I may well kind of get to them on the list that I've got here, but otherwise pop them in chat. And then hopefully at the end, we'll open up some time for some conversation as well, because I'm sure there's people that already have podcasts and that you have some other tips as well. So again, thank you, Jim, very much for joining us. So Jim, can you just start by maybe telling us a little bit about your history? A lot of us know you from the kind of Call to Coach and the Theme Thursday, but what's your history with podcasting? How long have you been doing podcasting?
That's a great question. So about 12 years in that space, although my first introduction to podcasting was in 2003. I was at a Oracle conference and I saw some folks carrying around a recorder of some kind. And I said, what are you guys doing? And like, we're recording a podcast. And I was like, I'm not sure if they called it a podcast or not, but that's what they were doing. And I thought that would be kind of cool. I always wanted to be in radio. It never paid. And so it doesn't pay very well here in the United States. So that never played out. But my first podcast, I was actually a guest on someone else's podcast. And that maybe actually be a little tip in this, is if you're thinking of podcasting, before you go do all the work, see if you can be a guest on somebody else's podcast that's already doing it, so you can kind of see how everything works and everything's put together. But a listener, a technology show, I contacted the host and said, I'd like to be on your show. And he's like, well, I kind of have a plan. I'll let you know. And he went about 9 months and then said, hey, would you come on? And was on the show about a year before I decided to do my own. And then, of course, once I did one, right, you guys know my motto: anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So once I started one, I did 3 and then 5, and then realized that's not sustainable. There's only so many hours in the day, so we backed those down. And I currently have 2 of my own, plus I think we have 7 or 8 at Gallup. I just produce most of those. I don't actually, you guys know me on Call to Coach and Theme Thursday. So yeah, so we're 10 years, I think. Home Gadget Geeks, my tech show, is celebrating 10 years in December, and I think we're coming up on 7 or 8 on Call to Coach. So we've been doing it for a while.
So that was my next question. What are some? We know you from Call to Coach and Theme Thursday. You just mentioned their Home Gadget Geeks. What other podcasts do you do?
Yeah, so the 2 on my network. So if you go out to theaverageguy.tv, that is my site. I started that because back in the Windows 95, 98 era, if you had a computer and you didn't know what you're doing, you were screwed. It just was not, it was hard. Drivers were hard. All those things were hard. And I had it figured out. And so I wanted a website for the average person, the average guy, so to speak, who just couldn't figure out all the technology. So that's why the averageguy.tv, that's why the brand. So Cyber Frontiers, which is a cybersecurity podcast, and then Home Gadget Geeks, which is basically whatever I want to talk about from a technology perspective. We do, it's a variety show. And then Saturday mornings, and you might, this is one, if you're thinking about starting a podcast, Saturday mornings, US time, 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern, we do Ask the Podcast Coach. So Dave Jackson, who's a Hall of Fame podcaster, and myself spend an hour and a half just talking about the things that are going on in the podcasting world. And so that if you're thinking about it, we answer a lot of questions around the podcasting space. So those, and then everything we do at Gallup. So that's pretty much it, Charlotte, right now. I think it's
Cool.
enough.
Well, fair enough to keep you busy. How many are you kind of put, I mean, I see them pop up, but how many do you reckon you're putting out a week?
Well, during the pandemic, we were 4 or 5 a week. It was crazy. We did 50 all year last year, and I did 50 by June this year. Wow. So we have decidedly slowed down a little bit. One is our registration numbers dipped a little bit, which means everybody's kind of gotten re-engaged. Not everybody, but a lot of folks got re-engaged in whatever they were doing. And I overran my staff at Gallup. Like, they were looking at me like, if you do more, I'm going to quit. And so we slowed down a little bit. I have a video editor and an audio, or a regular editor, whatever you call those. And we've gotten about 2 months behind on some of the recordings. So you'll see September, we're backing off, and in October, we're backing off even more. We need to catch up. We have a lot of material out there, Charlotte. So I'm probably down to back to the 1 or 2 a week that I was at kind of pre-pandemic. But wow. Man, during the pandemic, I could not, so the organization was coming to me saying, hey, can we do a podcast on this? Can we do a podcast? You need to do, some of it came from the coaches. We're like, hey, can you talk about this? And so I would grab some folks who could and do a podcast on it.
Cool. Yeah, no, I've noticed that the breadth's got a bit wider, and I think I posted on my Facebook, the kind of coach Facebook yesterday, how I listened to the financial well-being one, and there were some real gold tips in there, and just such a critical time to be thinking about not just your personal well-being, but financial well-being. And it really got me thinking about, why do I bristle at the word budget, and how that impacts my strengths and things. So yeah, no, that was a really great one and a different one.
Good.
So
good. Yeah, we got a few more of those coming. I think well-being is going to be the topic of the recovery, right? So for the next couple of years, I think there'll be a lot of conversations around well-being.
Yeah, cool. So maybe let's start with some of the technical bits. If I was starting out afresh, and I know I've mentioned to you about the webcam and the speaker, what are some of the things that we need to think about technically starting off with, and maybe what are some of the brands that you go, hey, look, here's a real good all-rounder. Can you start with some of the technical things?
Yeah, I'll take them in kind of priority order. So if you're gonna just do an audio podcast, so no video, that makes it a lot easier, just to be 100% honest, because you just need a microphone for that, from that standpoint. There's 2 really good ones. One is the one I'm using. Samsung, not Samsung, but Samsung makes this Q2U, just the letters Q2U. It's the most available in most of the markets you guys are in. In the U.S., we have a few more available to us, but a really good mic. You'll pay anywhere from $75 to $100 for it. Pre-pandemic, it was like $50. Of course, during the pandemic, anything related to this skyrocketed. That will correct itself in the next couple months. But Samsung Q2U, and then an Audio Technica. Don't ask me why I've got this available, but this is an Audio Technica ATR 2100. This is the old version. They now have what's called a 2100X or a AT 2005. I know they don't come up with very good names for these, so sorry to throw out all the model numbers. But you can really, what you're looking for is both an XLR, so that's the little round circle with the 3, that's called XLR, the three pins, this one. That's called XLR. That's, when the guy's on the stage singing, your favorite band is on the stage singing, every musical instrument uses this connection of some kind, right, to go in, XLR. So a Shure SM58, which is the music standard across the board. Your church has it, the musicians use it, everybody uses an SM58. That'll actually work. You could use that for your podcast if you wanted to. You just need to go into a mixer. The difference on these mics is they have a USB connection right there. So there's a little micro USB or mini. Forget what that. I think it's a mini USB. And you can plug it directly into your computer. So this, there's a headphone jack out. It's everything you need to kind of get going. Now, you could, like Holly is doing right there, you could use a pretty good gaming headset as well. Some of those now, you're going to spend $150 to $300 for them. They're a little more expensive, but those kind of work as well. if you want to go that route. I kind of recommend these because they have a lot of versatility. And I have mine on an arm. These are another $100 if you want to do it this way. You can get some cheaper ones for $25. But that's really, Charlotte, that's really the first thing to consider as a microphone. Since podcasting has gotten popular, there are a million different brands out there and a million different opinions of what's the best. I like that Samsung and the ATR because they're both XLR and USB, and they give you the most flexibility. Chances are you probably have a pretty good sound person around you that can maybe help with this as well. I'm always, if you want to send me an email, Jim_Collison@gallup.com, I can send you some suggestions as well on the mic. So that covers a mic. If you're going to go video, of course, you need a video camera. Those are also impossible to find right now. They're starting to loosen up just a little bit. Logitech is kind of the brand I like to go with, and they're available all around the world. The C922 or the C930 are the best. Man, that C920, the one I'm currently coming off of, had gotten all the way down to $50. And then the pandemic hit and it went to $150. So from a camera perspective, the best camera you have might already be in your laptop, or the best camera you have might be, you can actually use a digital camera in some cases. USB goes in anything that you use on your computer that accesses Skype or StreamYard or whatever, right? Whatever you decide. I said Skype, didn't I? Zoom, Teams. If it works in those, chances are you can use that. The little tiny cameras that you have, they'll have little tiny sensors. So lighting is probably important as well. Charlotte has a lot of forward-facing light, and that's what's kind of key. If you look at her, she's well lit. It's all natural. She was trying to do that during the evening. She would need some lighting kind of in front of her. She also has a back door that's going to be ablaze if the sun is coming through the back door. So all these things you guys have had to figure out because most of us have been working from home. And so you've been kind of figuring those things out. You're all on cameras now, or most of you are. Chances are that will work. You could upgrade to a better camera. The ones that come with laptops, the Windows side, they're okay. They're not great. The Mac ones, you're almost always better off just going with what Mac gave you if you're on an Apple computer. So you got some options kind of with that as well. And then when we think of lighting, I have some umbrella lighting. I bought some $60 or $70 umbrella lighting on Amazon here in this market. You can use just about anything. Just make sure you get it diffused. That's kind of the key. I even had a buddy who took a regular light bulb and just put a milk jug over the top of it to diffuse that light. You just don't want really bright light shining right at you. It takes a little practice just to do all these things. And I don't get super specific because everybody's situation's a little different. Start messing around with this and start looking at and start getting some opinions from your friends. And it'll become really clear kind of what you need. You'll need a little bit of equipment to get started. I don't know, Charlotte, that's a long answer, but it's a pretty in-depth, we spend a lot of time talking about this on Ask the Podcast Coach. It's a pretty in-depth question. We could spend the rest of the hour talking about it, but that gives you a quick primer, I think.
Given that the microphone is the key bit, you mentioned about the arm. What do you find the benefits around the arm versus, on the desk or, even the sort of microphone type thing?
Yeah, so it's a great question. At work, they know when I'm done talking because I just do this. They're like, it does get it off the desk. One, it can get really close to you, which for a mic like this, you need. You want it kind of less than a hand away from the microphone. That makes some people uncomfortable, but you sound a million times better. If I'm trying to do this way out here, you've heard those calls, right? People talking out here and you're like, oh, I can't take that too much longer, right? So an arm gets that microphone closer to you. No matter what you have, you'll be better off the closer the mic is to you. You can actually use these arms for a variety of things too. You can put lights on them. You can put a camera on them. So you can move they're pretty versatile from that. I think Neewer, Neewer, I think they're a company that makes these pretty inexpensively. You get them for $25, $30 US from Amazon. I have no idea in the other markets. But Charlotte, I really like having it just because it gets the mic here. And then when I don't need it, you can kind of push it away and get it off the desk. It also keeps it from rolling off the desk at times. You've had that, or somebody walking by, clipping the cable and the thing goes flying, right? Having it kind of secured down helps. You could use one of those mic stands. You know, you've probably seen them, right? They pull up the center and a boom arm. You could do that too. You don't have to do this if you got one of those. You can rig those up to make it work too.
Is yours attached to a wall or the desk?
Just to the desk. It's got a little clamp, just clamps right to the desk. If you didn't have a clamp, you could screw a hole through the desk, and they have an adapter that goes into it that just goes right in. So
Okay.
some flexibility there. Yeah, just right on the desk.
Cool. All right. Then I guess I was thinking about the next piece would be, what about the platforms that you pull it all together? I think I was Googling the other day, and oh my God, I was like baffled by the amount of different platforms there are that you could record it on and cut it on. So what's your recommendations when you're thinking about the platforms?
Well, this is hard because I'm going to recommend what we use just because I'm most familiar with it. But you're right. There are a bunch of podcast recording platforms, Squadcast, Simplecast, basically anything cast is probably a platform that way. We at Gallup use StreamYard, and StreamYard, I think, for what we do and what I do, I use it for both. Well, I use it for all my podcasts now. It gives you the most flexibility at the right price. They have a free plan and a paid plan. The paid plan that we're on is $240 a year, not terrible. And you get a lot of features with that. You can brand it. You can bring the comments in. You can put things in the background. I mean, all that stuff you'd expect. You can record it to a YouTube channel. You can go to YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Periscope, just about any one of those streaming platforms that you want to go to. It'll also record right to Amazon. So we oftentimes want to record an interview, but we're not going to stream the interview. We just want to record it. We can jump on StreamYard, record it there in pretty good 720p. And if you want to pay a little bit more, you can get 1080p quality, which is really good. It's a pretty big file. But you can record it to the Amazon instance and then download it from there. It never has to go to a platform. So that gives you the ability to maybe do an interview. Maybe you're not a live streamer. By the way, live streaming is really hard. Not the way I'd suggest you start. If you're going to do this, if you're going to start a podcast, maybe start with interviews. We can maybe talk about that in a little bit. But this gives you the ability to record it, download it, both audio and video, or just the video or just the audio from Amazon, and get that. So StreamYard, Charlotte, that's for most early podcasters. That's my big recommendation. The other ones work and are just fine. Can you do it on Zoom is the question I get all the time. Can you do this on Zoom?
Got that written down here as the next question. So you preempted that.
Good. Well, everybody asks. You certainly can. Quality is suspect, and they use this weird thing called variable bit rate on the audio, which means if you go to edit the audio with the video and you don't have the right equipment, which is really expensive, it gets out of sync. So I don't recommend Zoom at all because you can't edit it. Now, if you want to record it on Zoom and you're never going to edit it, Zoom is perfectly fine. But I don't recommend Zoom if you have to edit it.
All right. And then when we're thinking about editing, like how long does it take to edit something, and what are you really thinking about editing? Are you editing the bloopers or the kind of bit of the fluff at the beginning? What's the editing process?
It depends, Charlotte. It depends what you want to do. You know, an NPR podcast has dozens of people working on it, and they probably it's probably 100 to 1 in time they put in for what they produce, and they have really good quality podcasts. Home Gadget Geeks, which is a one-take wonder. We do no edits. And actually, to be honest, on Call the Coach and Theme Thursday, those are 0 edits as well, right? We just do them, and they slice the ends off, and we produce them that way. That's more of like a 2 to 1, maybe 3 or 4 to 1 if you count all the transcripts and other stuff you have to provide. It gets a little more costly at that point. When you're first starting, it's going to take you twice as long as it's like with anything, right? You got to kind of learn you got to get and figure out, like, how do I do this, and how do I want to do it, and do I want to buy, you're going to need audio and video editing software. That's why I always say start with audio, because it's a little bit cheaper to just start with audio. It gets more complicated if you add the video piece in. But yeah, that's kind of, I would say a good rule of thumb is if you're going to make an hour-long podcast, it's going to probably take you 6 hours to make it. Okay.
All right. I kind of quite like the bloopers that maybe happen that you might edit out. Like it feels like it's, it's more natural, but others are different. And what about the platforms that you might upload it to or cut it on, or the platforms? How are they different to, say, I remember when I first started listening to the podcast, I was listening to iHeartRadio. Yep. And I remember that was the first time I ever spoke to you a number of years ago, and you were like, hey, no, I think you should be listening on Beyond Pod. And I know lots of things have changed then. How do those link up with the different platforms that you might listen to them on?
Yeah, it's a great question. How many of you are currently listening to podcasts? How many of you, just raise your hand if you're listening? Okay, awesome. So the podcast player, there's dozens, I should say dozens of really good players that are out there. Innovate, Castbox, Overcast, just a bunch. There's a whole bunch. iTunes has their own. Now Google has their own. So that's a listening platform. That is one thing. But what you need is a host. So if you're going to do an audio podcast, you have to have a place to host it. There's a whole nother set of players in that space. Libsyn, Blueberry, Spreaker. That's who Gallup uses, is Spreaker. Yeah, I'm saying it right. Some people, did you mean speaker? No, Spreaker, because all the other English words were taken, I think, at that point. So Spreaker, Podbean, Anchor, Shoutcast. There's a bunch of them to do it. You just have to kind of decide, like, who am I going to go with? There are some that are free, Launchpad, Anchor, some of those you can start on absolutely free. There are some that are paid. Some of the ones I mentioned, Spreaker, Libsyn, Blueberry, those guys have all been in the space for the last 6 or 7 or 8 years. They have paid plans, but their plans aren't very expensive. $10 to $20 a month is what you could expect. Somebody needs to host those files, and then those files get picked up by the players and to be listened to. You can use YouTube in that way if you want to. You can upload audio only to YouTube if you wanted to get it done that way. It's kind of a little weird, but if you have a video podcast, that's a good place for it to go as well. So you have a media host. That's very, very important. Someone you're going to house those files you're going to make, and they're going to get served, right? That's where people are going to download it from. Then you have audio players. That's how people are going to listen to it.
And is there a correlation between the two? As in, if you were listening on a player, can you get it from any of the hosts, or are they limited? Which hosts will play your podcast?
Yeah, in the database world, we call it a many-to-many relationship. So there are many host providers, many players, and some host providers have their own player.
Right.
So you have that as well. It could be an all-in-one. The trick is to have it everywhere. And there's a few key, if you're going to have a podcast, there's a few key platforms that you have to have it on. So the first one is Apple. You have to, I think it's podcast.apple, or let's see, I'd have to look it up again, but Apple has a platform that you'd want to submit it to. Google has a platform that you'd want to submit that to. And then you mentioned, Charlotte, some of the iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora. They're all places now that are Audible. They're all places now that are kind of hosting your podcast feed, and you can get your podcast in there as well. I would say if you're just first starting, just get it on Apple. Like, don't worry about Apple. Covers 70% of the market right now. And so if you can get your podcast on Apple, once it's there, then you can start looking around at some of the other. Spotify is going to be a big player in the space here coming up. And so that'd be a good second one. But certainly focusing on getting it. Now, Apple doesn't host it, right? It's just a pass through for them. So you're going to give them your feed. They're going to pass it through. It's going to be able to play on their player.
And you can do that. This is very much a personal question because I don't have an Apple phone or an Apple device. Can you do that even if you don't have an Apple device, like PC, Samsung phone, Google? Can you still do it if you don't have an Apple device or account?
Yes. Well, and you should, because the Apple API, so you submit it to Apple, their API is actually picked up by a whole group of players that they use to get, if you search for a podcast. So even if you don't have an iPhone, you put it on Apple, because other people are going to find it through a whole bunch of other players that use the Apple API as their backend.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. So this is a good example of showing the office with my husband, who's going to go and jump on a call, and he's kindly jumping into the other room. So classic example of, well, I've got a headset on, because otherwise
I thought you were going to say he was going to jump on the trampoline.
No.
I thought you were going to say he's going out to jump on the trampoline.
No, he's going to go and jump on his call in the other room. Okay. So my next question was, I noticed that I was reading something, and it talked about artwork and songs that you might have. Have you got any kind of thoughts around both of those things, where the best places to source them, or what you need to think about on those?
So if you're a good artist, and you'll know it if you are, and most of us think we can do our own art, it's not very good, just to be honest. I started doing my own art in the very beginning, and then I started looking at what real artists could do, and I was like, oh, this is terrible. So you will need one piece of album art, and it's 3,000 by 3,000 pixels for iTunes. That's not the only thing you need, but at a minimum, you're going to need that piece of artwork, square piece of artwork, 3,000 by 3,000 pixels on that. That's the minimum requirement for iTunes and for everybody else. Some of them are going to require, because the old standard is 1,400 by 1,400, but once you have 3,000, you can scale that thing down pretty easily. You go to Fiverr. There are a bunch of services where you can get artists. You have to be careful on Fiverr, because some Fiverr folks have been ripping off other people's art and then selling it as their own. So you have to just be really, really careful. But this may be one. Everybody has a graphics design friend that, maybe you could throw a couple bucks their way and let them design some cover art for you. Do you have to have it? Well, yeah, actually for Apple, you have to have something. Does it have to be good? No, it doesn't have to be. You can get away with something that you design and put up there, but you will need at least one piece of art for that thing to show up in the feeds. I think probably most of you are in the coaching business. You've probably got somebody who helped you with your website. They can probably also help you with your album art. It'd be a good idea if you've got a website design, just make it look like your website. So those things kind of come together. They kind of tie in. The reason you do a podcast in a lot of cases, I think, is to build your brand for your site, for your own site. And so maybe a great opportunity to take what you already have on your website, just make it into a podcast and make that art that way.
Ooh, like you spared a great idea. I remember Caroline Maguire, she did the Strengths Partners logo for us, or the thumbprint part of the logo. So I'm like, ooh, I could probably reach back out to Caroline and say, hey,
you probably could.
Could you help me with this? I remember I paid her for a couple of things. So yeah, that's good. Yeah. And what about music?
Oh, this is a great topic. Don't use any of it. Like you can't, lots of folks want to grab commercial music and put it into their podcast, and that's an absolute no-go. At some point down the line, no matter how big or small you are, you will get caught. And right now, particularly here in the United States, they are coming down hard on people who have been playing copyrighted music in their podcasts. So my son was in a band, and they put an album together but never sold it. And so I grabbed music off that. I found a couple spots on that. That was some early music for me. I had a podcast host who was a musician, and he made some music for me. You're not creating a mixtape. You're creating a podcast. You really only need, in most cases, 30 seconds or less of music. So see if you can, there's artists on SoundCloud that you could contact to see if you can get original work. You don't want anything that's been sold anywhere at any time in that. There is royalty-free music you can buy online. This has gotten a lot better too over the last 5 or 6 years. There are places you can buy royalty-free music, and they give you, oftentimes they'll give you a 5, 15, 30-second clip when you buy that. And so you got the ability to do it that way as well. You can expect to pay $25 to $50 for the rights to use a music in a podcast. It can be more expensive. It probably won't be any cheaper. But do not take music you've heard on the radio or you found on iTunes and put that in your podcast. That just is, you will get caught fast. So on YouTube in particular, you'll get caught. So I had a buddy who I was interviewing, and he had a screen just like I have right here, right? This one right there. and he had the NFL. He had a football game from the NFL playing on it. No sound, just the video playing, and it was in a small little window. And YouTube caught that and gave me a copyright strike for playing copyrighted material on YouTube. So they're getting really serious about this stuff. So just be really, really careful of what you do around music and video.
So if I think I'm a good artist, I could start drawing my own, but I can sing my own intro.
You could make your own. You could make your own if you want. Yes,
I'm not going to. I posted yesterday on another Facebook group. Who we were having the conversation about a voice coach. I've been looking for a voice coach. So yeah, I don't think I'll do that yet. What about
you don't want to hear me either. Trust me.
What about getting noticed? How do you go about marketing yourself, getting noticed? You mentioned about making sure it's on different platforms. What are some of the tips you've got about getting it out there and use it as marketing?
Yeah. This is by far the hardest part, just to be honest. Creating the content and all the stuff you have to do to get it published pales in comparison to how difficult it is to market yourself. There's right now, I think we're at 30,000 podcasts a day or something. It's something ridiculous that are being created. There's a few. Anchor is kind of the big offender on this because they're free and they publish everywhere. Lots of folks have gone out and created a brand new podcast and they get 2 or 3 episodes in and then they quit. And that's okay, but it's just made it a very, very crowded space. The chances of you being discovered through normal channels like we used to, like Google or some of those kinds of things, are actually pretty small now because it's just such a crowded space. You have to get out there and network. It's just like any other small business. You got to get out there and get word of mouth, get people listening to it. It's tough at first. You got to win some folks. You got to kind of show up in some spaces. You have to ask people to review it for you. You have to, I think I've said this already, but be on other people's podcasts, right? You have to, you got to work it. You got to give it away. You got to get out there. You got to find ways to get people to listen to it. And then you have to be interesting. And not everybody's interesting for everybody. There are some folks who you just like, you yourself are like, nope, I'm not going to listen. And then you kind of wonder, how do they even have any listeners, right? You've probably listened to those podcasts before. You're like, this is terrible. How do they even have any listeners? Well, that's because we're all a little different. We're all looking for a little bit different stuff in this. And so you find your niche, right? For some folks, that's easier to find than others. Depends on what you talk about. It depends on what you do. If you're starting brand new, I tell folks you're pretty terrible for the first 10 of these that you do anyways. And I know you're like, no, I'm not going to be terrible. No, trust me, you're going to be terrible, right? It just is what it is. You can't avoid it. You're just going to be terrible. Even so, when I started doing the Gallup podcast, I had been podcasting for 3 years. And if I can't even go back and watch the early versions of Called the Coach because I was so bad, right? You learn, you grow. So for the first 10, 15, 20, maybe even 30, don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to get promoted. Just do it. Get out there, get it done, produce it, get some feedback. Get out there, get it done, produce it, get some feedback. Figure out if this is something you want to do even long-term anyways, right? And don't put so much pressure on yourself to promote it. Then once you've got something, like you'll get a note back from somebody that says, man, I really like your podcast. Okay, now you're on to something. Like once you've gotten that very first bit of feedback, then think, okay, I'm ready to be marketed. And Charlotte, there's a million different ways to do this, from like all the things I mentioned there. Yeah, a bunch of different ways.
Cool. All right. So 2 questions for you. What's your most memorable, and this could be the same one, what's your favorite and most memorable one that you've ever done that really kind of sticks in your mind and why? And then the other one is the other end of the scale. What's the worst one that you've ever done that you go, oh my God, that was such a blooper. I can't believe that's out there. And then we'll go and see if we can find it. So the either end of the scale.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most memorable, both have been at the summit. And the very first year of the summit where I got a chance to sit center stage.
Yeah.
That's pretty memorable. Like
I was there, I remember,
people around you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a pretty amazing thing to sit in the middle of a room with a light on you and 1,000 people around you and kind of do the podcast. That's pretty great. The last year's 19, the one you joined me for, pretty memorable. I got to do that with Micah, and that also was great. What made it great was audience participation. You know, we had cheering and people that were there. It's a blast. It's the most fun I've ever had. I'm doing this. Hey, London wasn't bad either. That was kind of a fun, you know, we just did London back in December, and that was pretty fun. So I think those are some pretty memorable ones, and they're memorable because they've had great people on them, right? And we had a great audience. There's nothing better than podcasting live when you can get instant feedback. Most awful. That's a good question. I guess the question would be, which ones do I not want to ever go back and listen to again? In those, the very first, maybe the first two Called to Coaches I did were pretty bad. I've done some interviews though where I've messed up people's names. That's pretty embarrassing. You know, I have done some where I've stopped paying attention and re-asked the question that had just been answered because I had been thinking about the next thing, or I got distracted with something, and that's pretty awkward when you do this. Now, by the way, you survive all of those things. You know, you survive them, and you just keep rolling. But Charlotte, I think I know that's not. I didn't get exactly where you wanted to go with that, but
I didn't know where you were going, so it was fine. It was whichever.
I have to say, two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, I remember at the summit where you like the audience. I don't know that we knew it was going to happen. The room went dark, and then all of a sudden, you and Micah popped up in the middle, and you went, you know, I'm Jim Collison. I'm this live Called to Coach, and we were all like, yeah, woo! And I think, yeah, some of your colleagues were like, whoa, you know, what is this going on, type of thing, of these people screaming. So yeah, that was pretty special to have that live. And I remember you had Claire DeCarter as a guest and some others. Yep. So yeah, that was the very first one.
That's still my Twitter picture. So if you follow me at Jay Collison on Twitter, you'll see that picture. That's my background picture. That was a pretty special moment to be recognized that way by both the coaching community and my peers. It's pretty great.
And I have to say, you know, yeah, the other one last year where I had no idea, there was me sitting on the front, and you went, I'm just going to call my friend Charlotte up. And I was like, oh, I think some people would probably die if that happened, but I was just, I was on a high forever on that one. So I love just having that opportunity of coming up and speaking off the cuff. Okay, so yeah, what's your drink of choice when you're podcasting?
Yeah, this is a tough one because a lot of podcasters podcast at night, and you know, they'll try to drink a glass of wine or whatever, and not a great idea. Not because it's wine, loosens you up a little bit, and that's okay. But wine does some really terrible things to your throat, and so that's one of the few things. Soda kind of does too. So it's a very syrupy, sugary soda. I don't kind of recommend it. I'm actually sporting a little bit of both. I don't mind a little beer while I'm podcasting. So I oftentimes have that available. You can't get the heavy, you know, like a Guinness or some of those kinds of stouts. Again, it kind of does some funny things to your throat. But I always keep water on hand. So a lot of people like room temperature water just for that reason. But you can get by with cold water. Whatever. It is good to have, I push hard when I talk. And so it is good to have something to kind of keep lubricated there. Not a great idea to eat, by the way, while you're doing this. I don't know about you, but as soon as I eat, then I start burping, and you can kind of tell, right? Unless you're going to edit it. Now live, you can't get away with that. So you have to kind of be careful on that. You'll get a little, you know, sound in there or whatever, however you do that. So the other thing is teeth. If you're going live and you're on camera, you know, spinach or whatever that gets stuck in your teeth, that kind of stuff you want to watch out for too, right? I know, because it's all happened to me at some point in time. So don't worry about it too much, especially if you're just recording audio and you're going to edit it. You can get away with anything. Just remember though, it's all about your vocal cords. So just be kind to them.
Cool. All right. So just having a look in the chat, some of the questions that are popping up in chat. So Angie was asking, how do you reduce the glare or reflection from your glasses on Zoom or video? So I was on a call the other day with somebody. It was really hard to focus on him or look at him because all I kept seeing was like blue in his eyes. So how do you reduce that?
So I'm actually, I didn't turn my lights on for this. So let me do that. Alexa, turn on the studio lights.
Ooh, get you.
So, okay. So that's some more. This is now I'm official. I actually have to sit up because I'm in the light. Okay. So the key to lighting, especially for glasses, it's almost impossible to get rid of all of it. If you have me full screen, you'll still kind of see the lighting. I have my lighting up as high as I can get it. I do the same thing in the Gallup studios, get up as high as I can to kind of get that reflection of that glare out. At the end of the day, that's the best you're going to be able to do. No matter what you do. The only thing you could do different is drop your glasses a little bit, but then that looks dumb. So I just prefer, like, do your best you can. I try not to look up. See, if I look up, you can see the lighting in there. Try not to look up. Now it's hard because I also have the trifocal things and I'm trying to sometimes read the screen, right? Charlotte, I don't worry about it too much, to be honest with you. But the key is to get lights up as high as you can.
Okay. All right. Question coming through from, I'm going to muller your name and I'm very sorry, Anugro. Do you think more people have been listening to podcasts during the quarantine or less? Like what are you seeing maybe even on some of the Gallup ones?
Yeah. So I follow a couple podcasts that just talk about this stuff and they talk about podcasting. It was almost a net zero. There were some podcasts that did better during the quarantine, and there were others that did worse. Overall, I don't think we made any gains in the space over the course of the pandemic. People shifted their listening a little bit, so they were listening to more news and more politics and some of those things. Some of the other stuff that they had been listening to, they stopped. Now that's starting to come back. So we continue to see a 3 or 4% increase in podcasting every single year. Those would be the numbers from Infinite Dial that I kind of follow. I wish that those numbers were from Gallup, but we don't do podcasting numbers. As much as I try to talk them into doing a podcast survey, Gallup just won't do it. So I think that's Nielsen that does those, the Infinite Dial. And so yeah, 3 to 4% a year is kind of been the average. We saw a little bit of a spike last year. Last year was a good year for that, but kind of just general trends where it keeps growing. So it's not a bad space to be in.
The way you listen to is interesting. So I think I'll share with you. I used to pre-pandemic travel a significant amount to kind of clients. Where I live is at least an hour away from Melbourne City, or I might be flying. So I would listen to podcasts all the time, and I'd be up to date with all the different themes, Thursdays and quarter coaches. And since I've been at home, I've not consciously been putting Jim and Micah on in the car. So I have to, go, I'm going to listen while I'm gardening or something else. I'm not so good at listening to something while I'm doing something else because I'm just then useless at both of them. So yeah, it's that spare time that I'd always listen in the car. So I need to consciously go, I'm going to listen to this while I'm now walking the dog or whatever that is. So.
Charlotte, there's a comment in the chat room about the circle lights too. One of the things that you want to be careful, Antoine, I think said that if you get those circle lights right in front of you, they'll actually put a little circle in your eyeball, and that just looks freaky. So you got to diffuse those. You can't. It's just like you wouldn't want to take any light and just have it out there. You want to diffuse it. You can do it with the diffusing box. You can do it with diffusing umbrellas. You can do it with a milk carton. You just need something to diffuse that light a little bit. Get it as high as you can and as diffused as you can. In the room. So that's a good comment. It took me a while to figure that out. I was looking at some pictures of people and I'm like, what's wrong with them? Oh, you can see that their eyes were white and you're like, oh, that's not a good look. So, because a lot of people those rings were made to put the camera in the center. So you had to look through them, and that's just not a great look. So thanks for that comment.
Yeah. So you probably spotted some of the other comments that are coming in there as well, talking about the frequency, how often should I podcast? Is it, weekly, monthly? What's the ideal, number one, length, I guess? Is there an ideal length of a podcast? I saw a statement the other day that said, as long as you need it to be without being too long. And I'm like, well, okay, that's interesting. And then how often should you be looking at publishing something?
So Dave Jackson, my co-host on Ask the Podcast Coach, has a saying he got from somebody else, but he said it so many times, I'm going to give him credit for it. And there's no such thing as too long, only too boring. So if you have great content and people are willing to stay around and listen to it, doesn't matter how long it is. My daughter, who's a millennial, right? She's right at the very beginning of right at the end of millennial, right at the beginning of millennials, or Gen Z. She watches and listens to a 4-hour D&D podcast every week, 4 hours. And by conventional podcasting standards, that should be wrong. That shouldn't work. And yet those guys have hundreds of thousands, if not a million viewers now watching, because they're super interesting. And I think this is the key to podcasting. Be interesting. Be you and be interesting. There was another kind of question in there of what would make you say podcasting is not for you? Well, one, if you dread doing it, just stop. It's not worth it. If you start doing it and you hate it, just stop. It's not worth it. You don't have to do this. It's something you want to come back to and do all the time. But you need to be interesting to someone. Now, okay, I'm going to say that, and I'm going to caveat and say, if you want a podcast and if you don't care if anybody listens, then it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want, right? If it's helpful to you, it makes you prepare. It makes you do some things. Do it. No one's out there to say yay or nay on this. My very first blog post I ever wrote, probably 2005, I think. I blogged before I was a podcaster. And then I realized I could talk and it was a lot easier. And I didn't have any misspellings when I talk, right? So, I did say a lot of things wrong though, but I realized in that time I said on this blog post, I don't care if anybody reads this. This is for me. And that's how I started. And maybe that's for you. Maybe you just need to go on a journey and just do some things and see how it goes. Improve your speaking skills. Be a great thing to take a Toastmasters class with and then do some podcasting. They're good at this, right? They're really good at the concepts. So don't worry about audience. Do it for you. If people follow, awesome. If they don't and you still enjoy it, still awesome, right? Do it. Kind of do that for you. Did that answer? I kind of went off the okay. So it doesn't matter how long. It just matters what you want to do. Now, if you do a 4-hour podcast because you're like, hey, Critical Role does this. That's the name of this D&D podcast. There have been 1,000 D&D podcasts that have popped up since they've gotten super popular. They're not as popular because they just don't have the draw, right? It'd be like me expecting hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands, maybe tens of thousands or hundreds on Call the Coach. It's just a niche. It's coaching. It's Clifton Strengths coaching. It's a hyper niche. I can't really, we get thousands, but if I was disappointed because I didn't have 1 million, I'd be like, well, okay, that's a pretty tight audience, So anyways, is that...
Yeah, but I think what I like about Call to Coach, certainly for me and my clients, is, I'll find certain ones that I go, hey, you should listen to this. So it doesn't matter if they're not listening at the time. They might listen to it, 2 years down the line. Yeah. The other day I had a workshop and I recommend, it was all about, goals and hitting your goals and things like that. And I had them go back and listen to season 2, I think it was, and season 4. So, they were years ago. So I think it kind of covered one of the questions in there as well of, how do you get good guests, or how do you find something that's good topics and guests that are going to be interesting? And the other part of that was how far out of your calendar do you do something then? So I guess the guest pieces, I might start a podcast because I think Leo's got something really interesting to say. So I might have Leo and form a platform for Leo to be able to kind of share, versus necessarily I want to talk about something. And again, that links back maybe of why I haven't started one is I've maybe been guest on other people's shows and I've covered anything I want to talk about. So it's, what do you want to talk about there? But tell us a little bit more about, say, the calendar of how far out you might want to plan something. Is that important, or is it just, on the spot?
Yeah. So if you guys know me very well, I'm super stable and consistent and very disciplined, right? So it wavers all over the place with me. There are times on both Called to Coach and Home Gadget Geeks where I'm kind of responsible for guests. Sometimes I'm 6 months out, which is super great. Like I get momentum and things get going and we get all kinds of, it just like the planets align and it's like, this is awesome. And then sometimes I'm week to week where it's like, whoa, what are we going to do this week? I don't know. And the beauty of that, so like on Home Gadget Geeks, Mike Uyghur is my co-host, and Mike and I have known each other for 5 years. Mike and I can get together, I think, and have an interesting conversation, literally about 3 minutes of prep, right? Just like, here's a few topics we're going to talk about. There's something like Micah and I discovered during our time together that there's something magical about a host co-host. There we go. Relationship that's strong. And Mike and I have a really, really good working relationship together. People are drawn to that because in the rest of the world, relationships are a disaster. Like, right. They're disastrous. People don't get along very well. When they hear people getting along, that's attractive to them. And I get comments all the time, maybe once a week now, just saying, I love just listening to the two of you. Like, and that comes out of years of work together to make that work. We've been podcasting together for this is our 6th season. It's really 7 years if you count the time. It's a lot of time together. So having a good co-host can fit that bill, but maybe you're not a co-host person. Maybe you're a solo and you want to get on there and just have a conversation. Or maybe you want to do an NPR style where you want to make some content and mix it together and do some things kind of that way. I think, Charlotte, all those things are viable, are kind of viable options for the way you go about doing it. You need to discover what that is. That's the best way for you. What do you want to tell the world? You got this platform, you got this audience. What do you want to tell the world? Yeah,
it kind of links out. I remember the Brendan Bouchard's, Motivation Manifesto, and he talks about, well, you're the expert on you, and you've got knowledge and experience that maybe other people don't have. So kind of share that.
But the prep. I never close the loop on that prep.
Yeah.
So you need as much prep as you need to do it. You know yourself better than anybody. If you need a lot of prep, do a lot of prep. If you don't. If you're off the cuff,
go off the cuff.
Charlotte, I knew I could bring you up. I had 3 questions in my head. I knew I could bring you up and talk to you for 15 minutes, and it would be interesting because I know you, right? I know the questions to ask you. That works. Could I do that with a stranger? Be a little bit harder. I might want to know a few more things, but I've asked enough questions now over the last 10 years of doing this, that I may be able to get away with it.
Yeah, cool. So there was a question there you mentioned about Micah being a host. What do you see your role differences of that host, and what's your role then when you're on with her?
Yeah. It's supposed to start as a producer. That was supposed to be my role when we first started doing this. And then they said, well, you're gonna be on, right? I was like, no, like, I'm just going to produce these things. Like, well, we need someone to, like, we don't know what we're doing. And so the very first Call to Coach I thought it was going to be Jeremy and Debbie. It was our very first host that we did, Debbie Cracky. It's unbelievable that I remembered that. So, I said, like, the script has said, Jeremy Petrosini is our host, or Micah Libran is our host. That's what the script has said. I've just kept saying it. I don't think it matters, I guess is kind of what I'm saying. Call yourself whatever you want. I still consider myself a producer of the show. That's really my job, is to produce it, to make it great. I get a speaking opportunity in it, but I do consider myself as the producer.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. So we have a question from Barry. Hello, Barry. Nice to have you join us. Do you give much thought to your studio background, and what's your thought on virtual backgrounds? I know we started this, Jim, having the conversation about our backgrounds, and I've got my office with the dog asleep in the background, and it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
And I've got this weird office roof that's a converted barn, and I know you're in your your basement, and you give me a tour of your basement before.
Basement studio here. Yeah. Yeah. And I have this new studio at Gallup that I don't like, just to be honest. And it's too, like, I podcasted out of it a couple of times and it doesn't feel comfortable. Eventually it will, but I'm using the pandemic as an excuse. I like messy. I like, this is not clean back here. There's no clean lines. There's not order to my books. I got stuff all over the place. And I was telling Charlotte, I move things around. So to see if anybody will notice. The tech guys really do. They're always trying to find things like, oh, hey, you moved that. So right up here is my Channel 9 little squishy that I got when I was at Microsoft from their podcast studios. This guy moves them around all the time. It's almost like a Where's Waldo in the background. So if you watch Call to Coach, especially during the pandemic, you'll see about 20 different setups of this as I move stuff around. I was always monkeying with it, right? Dean hates it. Let's just be really, really clear. He hates my background. He was like, could you just put a curtain over the whole thing? And I'm like, no, I'm actually not gonna. It took me a while to convince him. He likes clean and efficient, and he's just very particular that way. And so we just kind of came to an agreement that what my way would be right. So I kind of leave it like this, and I'm comfortable like this. I always say, go with what you're comfortable with. I'm not a big fan of the virtual backgrounds. That's just me. I think it makes us look crazy. So do with it as you see fit. I do find one thing on camera angle that makes a difference in a studio is get your cameras up. So if you're going to do some podcasting, get them at eye level. So some of you have that and others of you don't. If you're going to do it on a regular basis, that's the one kind of truth I hold to, is try to get the camera at eye level with you. Otherwise, do what you want. Do what you're comfortable with. Make it a thing that works for you. And for me, I always kind of mix stuff up. I like different things. I'm not sure I'd want a clean background. I kind of like it. It's kind of like my personality. It's just a little messy.
Jim, I've got through the list of questions I've got written down here. Before I know we've got different things pop up. Is there anything else that I've missed? Either one in chat that somebody else says, oh, hang on, Charlotte, you haven't asked that one. Or is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you think is important for people to know?
Well, let me just say this, and I'd even be okay with folks open up their mic here and asking questions if they want to do that directly. You're certainly, like, we just raced through a decade of learning for me in this. So don't have expectations for yourself that you like, this is the one thing you need to do. There's a couple things you need to kind of ease yourself into this. If you're thinking about doing it, do some practice ones. I don't know what makes us think we can just all of a sudden our first podcast is going to be great. Like, you need to practice it, record it, get some folks to listen to it yourself. Don't listen to it the minute after you've recorded it, by the way. Wait till the next day. It's a little bit more, you're a little bit more objective the next day. It's like when you write something, you're always better at finding the errors the next day, not that our brains don't work really well that way. You'll hear things differently. So give yourself some time. Like, let it, some of you are ready right now. Do some practice things. Just kind of work on it as you go. And if, like I said, if you have questions, you can always come back to me. There's a lot to it. I'm not going to lie. It's a commitment. It's a job. So if you think you're going to do this, don't say I didn't warn you. It's a lot of work. So, okay, with that, Charlotte, if anybody wants to maybe jump in with a audio question.
Absolutely. Let's open it up to anybody. Feel free to take yourself off. Antoine's got his hand up already. Go for it, Antoine.
I think my biggest question is about, no matter the frequency that we're doing, how much pre-canned stuff do you think we need? And so to kind of just make sure that's always been my challenge is I think a little bit like you, I do really well and I get all the stuff and then it kind of goes to the wayside and then it's like, oh my God. So how much do you recommend, have you learned to have pre-recorded before your release?
I don't keep anything in the can.
Okay.
Everything, if I have it, it's edited and it goes live. We don't hold anything back.
A ranger activator is just going to kind of do it and get it out there.
Yeah. Well, with the time shiftedness of it, it doesn't, in the way people consume podcasts isn't like Thursday night prime time anymore, and so they're not coming to it on a particular day. It just needs to be there the next time they log in to listen. So I'm not a regular. Now, can you? Totally. You can. In fact, next year, I'll tell you guys, there's a new podcast coming from Gallup that you're not NDA. I'm signing you all an NDA. You can't say this to anybody. But there'll be a new podcast coming from Gallup that will come out on a regular. It'll be very, very regular. So I'm gonna give that a try and see how that goes. So even though I said I don't do that, I'm gonna do it. It's the style. The style of this podcast needs to be regular. So we're gonna do it that way. But typically I don't keep anything in the can.
Okay, thanks.
I know some coaches like Murray Guest, he has his Inspired Energy podcast, and he'll record them, and then they don't necessarily go out the moment they're recorded, type of thing. Yeah, he has a kind of series of guests.
That's a great way to do it, by the way, Charlotte. You can do it if you want to do it that way. I'm not saying you don't. That my way is right.
You just don't. Yeah.
That's just my preference. If you want to do regular, you can do regular. You can do. So Antoine, let me say this. If you were going to do regular, 3 is probably the magic number to have in the can based on your frequency. That just gives you maximum flexibility. Yeah.
Cool.
What else?
Anybody else got a question? Or just wants to chat?
They've either fallen asleep or they're just tired of hearing this talk. Antoine, do you have another question? Or
so I'll let Judy first.
Judy, go ahead.
Judy.
I just wanted a clarification of the last statement that you made, 3 in the can.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what that means?
Sorry.
I don't.
Yeah. So that means keeping that you would have 3 recorded and maybe edited and ready to go shows that you would release then on a schedule. So say you're going to do a weekly schedule, and every Tuesday at 6 a.m. Central, you release, right? Some people do that. I don't, but some people do that. So you've got 3 stored up so that in case you have a week where you can't get an interview and you now don't have any content. We call that being in the can.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That helps. Thank you.
Yeah. It's hopefully the only jargon I use the whole time.
That came from me, so my apologies.
Yeah, no worries.
No problem. I like to learn the jargon.
Yeah. Just have them available to you. Antoine, did you have another question?
I did. How do you make the decision between audio, right, and your audio video? And why would you go to one? What's that difference like?
Yeah. It's a great question. If you're smart, you stay audio. If you really want to punish yourself, maybe you've got some things in your past that you need to fix, go video. Video is way harder, and the editing is harder, and the whole thing of everything about it is harder. And so I recommend if you're not versed in it, start audio first. Do audio only first, way more forgiving, and you can do a lot more with it. And not everybody expects it on YouTube. They don't always expect, we are, I'm live first, but that's only because that's how I learned how to do it. And that's my style. So it fits all the things. That's the only way I want to do it. But I would recommend start with audio and get practiced at that, and then maybe make the jump to video, because it's so much more painful. Video is just infinitely more hard unless you're already good at it. Yeah. Barry.
There we go. Thanks, Jim, and thanks, Charlotte, for doing this. Quick question, Jim. Is there a way to, when you release your podcast, to limit it in terms of distribution? I mean, regionally or nationally?
Yeah, so there are some services that you can purchase that will limit that for you, however you want to do it. I personally have never used any of them, so there isn't one I can recommend for you. But those are more like audience. You're not necessarily limiting it by region, but more by audience. So like maybe you charge for the podcast, and you only want a certain people with a code or with a certain sign-in to be able to get to it, there are services that do that. I can't speak to it very much because I haven't done any of it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's a great question. What else?
David.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, I've just a question on, is there a way of counting how many people have either heard or viewed the podcast? And is there some sort of relative critical number where somebody might notice and pick you up, say 50, 100,000, something like that, if they were looking to pick it up on a bigger level?
Yeah,
if you will?
that's a super great question. So all the host providers will have stats for you. So whoever you go with will have some kind of stats. The host does that because you'll have multiple players coming in on a single host. They'll count all the downloads at that point. On YouTube, they're their own host, right? So if you had YouTube videos up there, you would have Google Analytics around that to tell. So from an audio perspective, 95% of all podcasts get less than 100 downloads. So but there's tons of them out there, right? So there's a huge number, very few, although, hey, 100 would be 3 1/3 classrooms of 30 people. So, I mean, it's not nothing. Some people are like, oh, if it's only 100. Well, I mean, think about what you're talking about there, right? Getting picked up is a really interesting question right now because in the last year, the landscape has completely changed. Amateurs used to be able to play in that space. That's completely gone now. So the likes of Joe Rogan and Michelle Obama and the likes, they're starting to come into this space and dominate it now. And there's only so many dollars for advertising. And so they're taking most of those. I think Rogan's getting paid $10 million a year or something crazy like that. I don't know, something stupid dollars. By the way, you take that check every time. Doesn't matter what they're having you do, you take that check. And so for most independent podcasters, that day is, David, that day is kind of coming. You moved on me. There you are. That day is kind of come and gone. There isn't a lot for us on the independent side of getting picked up. The best you can do is really manage your influence to the people you want to talk to. And then however you want to monetize that. For most coaches, that's really around advertising. But there could be some things in there that you can monetize and sell, and kits and materials and whatever, those kinds of things.
So Jim, when you say picked up, do you mean picked up for advertising? Tell us a bit more about what you mean by picked up, or what David means by picked up.
Yeah, it'd be maybe like a Spotify saying, hey, I want to pick up your show and we're going to pay you to do this thing. All the platforms have a way of being on them without being anybody. So you don't have to, you can be on almost all of them now without having to have any kind of threshold. Even Pandora, which had set some, well, both Spotify and Pandora had set thresholds pretty high of getting on their platforms. Now they're pretty much letting anybody on. So you can distribute on anything with any download numbers, but getting picked up or having somebody notice you, that's probably 500,000 downloads now is probably what the get noticed number is. And we just to give you some numbers, we just reached, well, Theme Thursday in November sometime will hit the 1 million mark. So
did you get a check now? Did you get a check now?
I've been getting a check for the last 7 years. But we just hit 1 million. And so it takes a little time to get there. I think we're at 25,000 a month for Theme Thursday, just to give you, again, don't repeat that number. It's super secret.
Yeah, I'm recording this session and I was going to publish it out. So
yeah, you're going to have to take it down.
I'm going to have to do some editing.
Eat that part out.
Well, we'll have to record tonight and see if we cover the same thing tonight and decide which one I'm going to share. Question then about, oh no, it's gone out of my head. It'll come back in a minute. Anybody else got a question? There was a question that linked into that, but I can't remember. Fell out my head very instantly. Anybody else got a question for Jim? I'll remember mine in a
We
minute.
made it the whole way with no domain color question. How did that happen?
I've got them stuck onto my PC here. So it's kind of like, but then I realized I had an error in it. I had an extra R that I didn't need. What was my question? I can't remember what my question was. Oh, it was about advertising, actually. So I've listened to a couple of podcasts where there is purposeful advertising in the middle. And it kind of, I kind of go, and especially if it's advertising in the US for something that I'm never going to purchase here. What's your thought process about people advertising in the middle of your podcast?
If you can get away with it, do it.
Right.
If you can't, they are global. And, so my tech show, I'm a big HelloFresh fan, and I think that's only available here in the United States. And I lead off with a HelloFresh ad there. And it just is, my international audience knows that's.
So you then get paid by HelloFresh, do you?
Well, I have a referral code that if somebody purchases HelloFresh, they get $40 off. I make a $20 credit. I'm going to buy the stuff anyways. I might as well. And it's delicious, and it's changed the way I cook. Right. And it saved me in the pandemic. Are you kidding me? Why would you not want to just go to theaverageguy.tv/HelloFresh and get your box? First box is $40 off. See how that works, Charlotte?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm quite liking this. I'm like,
Leo likes that. Leo, I got to laugh at Leo on that one. Okay, ads are tough because we're still very regional on some of the stuff. Not all of it is international. So, where you put it is key, and what your audience tolerates. If you think you were going to do a podcast and you thought you were going to get advertising for it, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with having ads in there. Nothing. I would say put fake ads in to begin with in slots to get your audience used to it. Because if you had an audience that for the last 2 years, you had no commercials, and then you do a commercial, they'll absolutely crush you. You will get notes and emails and tweets like, stop, because they're used to you not having it. And so if you place, I always say, place some fake ads in there if you think you're going to go that way, and then get them used to at least hearing an ad in there if you're going to do it. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. You don't have to have them. You can be completely ad-free. I was ad-free on Home Gadget Geeks for a lot of years, and I celebrated it.
Jess is asking, what's a fake ad? What do you mean? Describe what you mean by a fake ad.
Fill it in with your favorite thing. Like, you don't have to get paid to do an ad. Like, take your favorite thing and just make an ad out of it and say, like, now HelloFresh, they're not a sponsor, right? They don't pay me, but I do have an affiliate code if I want to do it that way. So take your favorite thing, just put it up front and talk about it. The funny thing is, the company you do that with, they may notice and then say, hey, can you do more of that? And I think I had, on the tech side of things, I had a sponsor for 4 years in LastPass. I don't know if you guys if anybody uses LastPass that's one I had negotiated with them on an annual basis, and we actually branded my app that way. That's one way of doing it. I did Amazon affiliate stuff for a while. Then they got crazy, and so I stopped doing it. But so if you want to do ads, you can.
New ball game, the ad thing. Then wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, you could, Charlotte, you could also advertise for another coaching. I mean, if you say you're a partner, you had a partner that you wanted to advertise, you could advertise for your partner. Okay. And but just do it regularly. Yeah. Here's the crazy thing about it. If you do it and you do it well, and you do it right, people remember what you said. Mm-hmm. And so for the longest time, folks would wait because I used to have the HelloFresh ad at the end. I just recently moved it to the beginning. They would wait for the HelloFresh ad to come, because they knew I was going to, hey, it's coming. He's going to talk about it. Like, it's coming. It's a little Pavlovian, right? They if people listen to you long enough, I mean, I am Jim Collison and live from the Gallup Studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This Gallup's called the coach, right? That's a phrase you guys have probably heard a few times, and you're like, okay, I'm in the right spot. I'm doing the right thing. Ads can be the same way if you want to do it that way, and you can advertise for anything that you want.
Beautiful. Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, Jen, that was a lovely idea about putting a fake
Jess,
ad in.
thank you, Jess. Where are you? Thank you for not skipping the intro. Woohoo! You can though, 30, 30, 30, and you're like, it's a minute 30, just 30, 30, 30, and you're to the content. So
I like it because, like you say, it's the chit chat that you might have with whoever your guest is.
Let's come. The good chit chat is live, right? That's where you really want to come. If you want to, you got to be a special one on the live show. That's where the good chit chat is.
Right now. Okay, Jim, thinking of your time and allowing you to go and have your evening and allowing everybody else to go and have the evening, day, morning. And I know that you're on again with a mid. Do we have any other kind of final questions for Jim, either related to podcast or anything else? Angie does.
Angie's got one. Yep.
Oh, we still can't hear you, Angie.
Angie, you're double muted. You're double muted. By the way, while you're unmuting yourself, thank you for smiling and laughing. All of you who Angie, your audio is weird.
Angie with the weird audio. You sound like an alien.
Yeah. Type it in the chat room. I'll wait for you. Type it in the chat room and we'll do it that way. Did she? Oh, there she is. If you smiled at my jokes, one, you're the lower 1%. And two, thank you for doing that because it always makes me feel good when people do. This is kind of fun. Call the coach. I just have to stare at Micah. And I don't get to see you guys. So maybe next year there'll be an opportunity to do something like that.
Yeah, well, there's no reason we can't start it more often. I mean, I think that's why I like doing these sessions with other coaches because we're sharing with other coaches. That's cool.
Yeah, no, I kind of like it. Angie asks about a recommendation for audio editing software, and that is Audacity. There's no hands down best, just like it sounds, AUDICITY, Audacity. And it's open source, so it's free. It will do video, audio too. So if you made a video and you want to strip the audio out of it, they have what's called an FFmpeg encoder that you can plug in, and it will strip the audio out for you. So I think they're in 2.2.1, and you can download that for free, and you start using it today. Learning curve's a little steep on it, so you'll need to kind of practice it, but no different than Audition or. If you have an Adobe subscription somewhere, you'd want to use Audition for sure. But if you don't have Adobe, Audacity is the way to go.
Wow.
And on the video side, I'm still a Windows Movie Maker guy because that's all I need. I'm using a 2012 version of Windows Movie Maker that I just am holding on to with it's really hard to get and really hard to do. It's almost impossible to find now. It's out there, but Premiere on the Adobe side would do video for you. That's why it gets harder. YouTube has some small tools you can use internally to do it, but that's why I say don't start with video unless you know what you're doing. It's just harder.
So Holly's got a question about encoder. Was it your question, Holly, or somebody else's question?
FF. Okay, so it's called an FF, two Fs, MPEG, MPEG. FFmpeg, all one word. It's called the FFmpeg encoder, and you have to use it as a plug-in on Audacity, and then it will accept MP4s, the video, or M4As or whatever, and it'll just show the audio. So it has the ability to strip the audio right out of the video. It's coolest little tool I've ever used. I use it every week.
Some of the platforms that you use, Jim, we got the show notes, and it kind of does the transcript. Is that the recording platform?
We didn't talk about transcripts. So we use Otter, OTTER, Otter.ai, to do our transcripts for us. I have the paid version. It's a whole $10 a month. And if you go to theaverageguy.tv/Otter, I get a little credit if you do it that way. It's about 85%, and so you still have to you still have to go, and that's super cute.
I love what's going on here. Yeah,
that may be the cutest thing I've ever seen. Although I have grandkids, they're pretty cute too. So Otter, you just drop the MP3 in, you give it 25 minutes. It would depend. I do hour-long stuff, so it takes about 25 minutes. Transcription is there. You've got to fix it. And there's some things you got to do with it. That's just you're going to be in for. We've gotten a lot of positive run about providing transcripts now through the Gallup stuff. So I won't go back. They tried to stop, and I was like, no, I can't go back. I can't. They're like, what if we didn't do transcripts anymore? I'm like, no, we're doing transcripts. That's, or I'm stopping. So and they're like, oh, okay.
You edit the transcripts?
So Mark edits the transcripts for us. Yeah,
Okay.
that's his job. I have an editor that does it. He's really good at it and he likes doing it. I don't like
Right.
doing it.
You pushed your mic away there, Jim. Does that mean to say you were done?
No, I was sitting up.
Oh, okay. All right. Just double checking.
Yeah.
It was like being at an auction. Hang on. Jim's done. He's pushed his mic away. All right. As we think it's coming in for landing, I've stolen that saying from
one more. I think.
Yeah.
Antoine
sorry,
says, was it from Anton? No, Barry said, how's it with the Canadian accent? You just try it. It's usually pretty good. And they do some, if you pay for it, they do some voice print analysis and it gets smarter the more it hears you and the more you correct it. So it's worth a try, Barry. You have to pay for it to get that kind of, it's $10 a month, $10 US, which is like $400 Canadian. So I think you guys pay more for everything up there in Canada than we do here. All my tech friends, all my tech friends, I'm like, yeah, we bought that for $50, and they're like, oh, it's $500 here in Canada.
I'm still trying to figure out how they transfer the codes from US to Canadian dollars. It's another conversation.
I wish we had one world currency, but that's never going to happen. So we'll have to, not in our lifetimes. So. All right.
Interesting.
Well, hang around for a few minutes if anybody's got any lingering questions, but otherwise I think we've taken up enough of your time. Thanks for
thank you very much
for coming out. Love the tiara there, Angie.
Thank
welcome.
you. Is it working now?
It is working now.
It's working. Okay. I have too many things. My computer's broken down and I have zero capabilities. So yes, but this we have my husband's birthday. So my daughter is ready for the birthday.
Nice.
So
It looks great.
Thank you, Charlotte, again for a great session, and Jim for you joining us. It's just like, it's always amazing to see everybody. And Leo, thank you.
Likewise. Good to see you guys as well. There may be a version of this coming to a theater near you on a more regular basis. So you never know.
Cool.
That's a ton.
Thanks, Charlotte. Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. We'll
have a good day.
And another session.
Good morning. Whatever it happens to be. Charlotte, are we really going to do this at 6:00 in the morning tomorrow?
Yeah.
We are.
Well, you said
I did.
You would. It's 9 p.m. for me, so we might between the two of us we might be a little bit less with it if it's 6 a.m. for you and 9 p.m. for me.
Will you have a beer?
No, I've still not quite hit the alcohol because I'm still on some meds. So I can't mix the alcohol with the meds. So I have started weaning myself off I started weaning myself off the hard meds. And what did I have the other day? I did have something. And I did actually buy some fruit cider, because it's getting a bit warmer here now, which is quite nice. So no, I doubt I will. And I think you've seen me on alcohol. If I talk too much and giggle, if I talk too much and giggle too much normally, then on alcohol it's like even worse. So
I have indeed.
I don't have coffee either.
Barry, you have another question, Barry? Or are you leaving?
I was just saying thanks and goodbye. Have a great evening, folks, and a good morning, Charlotte.
Oh yeah, well, thanks for joining us, Barry. It was nice to have a conversation with you online the other day. So I'm glad I could get some of the Canadians together, because I was coaching somebody. In fact, Jim, thank you. I think you pointed her in my direction. Rachel was like, how do I start this thing? And I said, well, maybe get together with some other coaches. And I said, hey, look, I know Jen was in Canada, and I know Renee, and who are the other coaches? So, we've got quite a good Australian community. And Leo, I know you've got a fantastic, Philippine community, and US is a big community. But yeah, it's great to get the Canadians together. So well done if you then kicked off a Facebook group on that and can drive some of that Canadian.
I started a Facebook group this week.
Awesome! Yay!
Yeah, we got our first dozen members in the Canadian Facebook group. So and Antoine was one of them. So it's great.
Oh, that's fantastic. So good. Yeah.
What it can do.
Good.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us
together, Charlotte.
You're welcome.
Okay, take care, guys. Bye, Jim. Bye, Charlotte.
Take care. Bye, guys.
All right.
Charlotte, is there a way that you could save the chat and send it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
My computer's broken. It doesn't do anything right now. It's really hard.
No, I will do, and I'll Jim, can I share this recording or not because of what you said?
Oh yeah, no, I was just joking.
Oh,
I
okay.
was just joking.
Just double checking.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine.
All right.
So
Well,
that's
we'll see
inside Gallup jokes. That is the most overused joke in Gallup is what I'm about to say is super secret because that means tell everybody.
Okay. All right.
That's how we
You want to get it out
internally. There. Yeah. It's like, okay, cone of silence. Nobody say anything. That means it's probably gonna. It'll probably be public.
Get
by
it
the end
out
of the week.
there. Okay.
So.
Yeah, no, so Angie, often I get to the end of this and I hit end and then I forgot to save the chat, so I'll make sure that, I think when I'm recording it automatically saves the chat.
I think it does
I will do
too. It's just, with the smoke, I swear that, our West Coast is on fire, so I guess it affects computers and internet and power.
Angie, where are you? Where are you located?
I'm in Washington State.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
East or west?
East, but it's worse here. We were off
the
scale of the chart. Yeah, so we were.
It's on the Spokane side?
It's just south of Spokane.
Yeah. Okay.
So at Washington
sorry.
University. So we're.
Yeah, the whole West Coast is burning down. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So apparently it affects the institution, everything. I don't know what's going on, but nothing seems to work.
It's creating beautiful sunsets for us here in Nebraska, by the way. I just want to thank you.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, that's harvest as well. You get the harvest sunsets, which is great.
I mean, you have to see the positive side of everything. And the positive is we have these amazing sunsets because the smoke. So thank you.
We like that too. But I prefer, harvest dust for, the harvest moon and like
right. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll get some rain. Maybe you guys get some rain here shortly and start putting them out. Although, I mean, we're not that far from some cooler weather. So you guys should be hopefully getting some relief here pretty quick.
Yeah, well, like Charlotte had seen on my Facebook, it's a town that's 15, 20 miles is gone. 80% of this town is demolished.
Yeah.
There's nothing left.
No.
Right.
No.
It's super tough, especially with like pandemic going on, and you got to throw things like that in as well. And we had the reverse in Australia. We had the fires, then we had the pandemic. So it was like those people that lost all their homes, and then a bloody pandemic. And now you've got it that you've been living through a pandemic, and then you lose your home, or you got to move out, or you lose power or something. It's just like you do feel a bit
it's crazy. We have a housing development just over the hill from us down right on the river. They never should have built it to begin with, but 2 years ago when we had those big floods here, it just took it. I mean, it took it right out. I mean, there's 100 homes in there that, I mean, they might as well have burned down because they were destroyed when they were done. And we had a dam that had probably 5 foot thick ice that broke, and so you had 5 feet of ice screaming down the river valley on taking everything out. I mean, think about that. Those things weigh
like a saw.
Hundreds of tons. Yeah, just wiping everything out in its path. And luckily, we didn't lose it. Nobody lost their life over that. But I mean, think about just crazy. So we went through that 2 years ago when huge chunks got either flooded or wiped out by this ice dam deal. So it's crazy times. Crazy times. Well, we're thinking about you out there. I'm hoping and praying for some rain for you guys. Cooler weather and some rain.
It's good to see you, Leo.
It's nice to see you too. I always wear the crown now. I want to see the crown all the time. Matches your earrings, matches your necklace.
I am getting all dolled up. Too bad my husband's cooking his own dinner. So.
Well, it is his birthday, right? I mean,
you might want to go and listen. I don't want to get blamed for this. So.
They knew I was on this, so it's okay. But yeah, it was great to see everyone. Leo, I hope to see you soon again. You as well, Charlotte. Thank you, Jim. And
well, if you're joining us for, I think we've got lean coffee next week, and then something about agile.
When is that one?
Lean coffee, I think, and Jen that was on here is leading that one. I just said I'd host it and send it. I don't know.
It is. It's next Wednesday. Okay.
Yeah, so there's two different times. I'll repost it, and then after that we've got Emma doing her agile teams thing. So we'll hopefully see you for that.
That one, Okay, maybe that's the one I'm trying to find. Okay, Agile Teams.
I
I'll
think
se-
if
I'll-
I'm
I'll-
reading my
I'll
time
send-
zone correctly, it's 7:30 Pacific.
On what day?
On a Tuesday, I think. I'm not sure if
I
I'm doing
normally do them. I normally do them about the same time, Angie. It's normally 8, 9 for me in the morning,
Right.
and then the evening. I'll send you a link, Angie, with them both on.
Thank you, because I keep losing them, and then I'll screenshot them, and then I totally lose it.
Your name normally pops up. I've got my own little Cascade Coaches thing here, and your name is across everything that you might have joined. So it's like, yeah, you've probably already subscribed.
Oh no, but yeah, I'm trying to. I want to make sure I am. So that was the thing.
Well, we love
Okay.
seeing your smiley face. So thank you for joining us, and we're thinking of you.
Okay. We'll talk soon. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
See you later.
All right,
You
Jill,
thank you very much for joining us.
I'll see you in 11 hours.
You will do, yes, Jim. Go have your dinner, and yeah, I'll see you in the see you in your
shortly.
morning.
See you in the
Thank
morning.
you.
Yep.
All right.
Take care, guys.
This is
Cheers.
fun. Thank you.
See you later.